We're now going to apply the tools that we looked at last week in the introductory concepts to actually working with real estate examples and some more elaborate models for property investment valuation or investment property valuation. The exercise we're going to run through today or now are self-correcting. That means that they've been designed to be able to do it yourself, because when you enter the correct equation, sometimes the correct number, but usually equation, the yellow highlight will disappear to tell you that you've got the right answer. If you put the equations in correctly and get rid of the yellow highlight, not only have you solved the problem that presents you in the exercise, but it means that you're actually building your own model, and these are becoming a useful set of Excel models, if you like, that you can use for serious, proper calculations. And so you can change the data, which is in blue, and as long as you've got those yellow highlights going around, so your mathematics is good, you can apply it to other properties, maybe real properties. You may have an investment property of your own that you may like to run these things through. And so while sometimes getting rid of those yellow highlights can be a little bit frustrating if something's going wrong or what have you, know that the answer and the time you spend with it is worthwhile. Remember to check your calculations with that squared paper and your financial calculator side by side. It helps your learning. It helps you develop those skills so that you can use your financial calculator like you ride a bicycle. And it also gives you a little bit of proof, if you like, that the Excel models are also working. Beware, on occasions, the yellow highlighting can be a bit oversensitive to rounding errors. And so there are rare occasions with these more advanced models, not necessarily what we're going to be doing in this module, but further on in the unit, where you may find the yellow highlights don't disappear, and it might be because of some kind of rounding or something that you've put in. Most of the time it's because of an error. Sometimes it can be due to rounding. I think I have most of them taken out now so that the precision is adequate, but there still might be one or two little gremlins hiding in there. They seem to come up mysteriously even when you think that they're all gone. However, I think for probably 99.9% of the exercises you'll find that the self-correcting will work happily for you, especially if you use the blank models as you get from Moodle and follow what I'm doing as we work through the videos. You shouldn't have any problems, and so it should work quite famously for you. If you do find that the yellow highlight persistently doesn't go away and you're quite sure that you're correct, send me an email, let me know, send me a copy of your file. Don't send me a screenshot. Those things are nice to look at, but they don't really help get to the mathematics which is lurking behind the numbers. So send me your model, tell me where the wheels have fallen off or what have you, and I'll be keen to have a look at it for you. And that'll help not just you, but also future students. Okay, let's get into these models now. When you open this exercise, be sure to read through the introduction sheet. This is the very first tab. It may not necessarily open with the introduction sheet when you open the Excel file. I'll let you read that in your own time. The first sheet that I want you to look at closely is what's called the financial functions diagram. This introduces the concept of a cash flow diagram. I recommend strongly that you consider drawing up cash flow diagrams when you have practical problems to be solved. There's a lot more on this sheet than the actual diagram, by the way, and so what you need to be able to draw up is actually quite simple. In fact, all it is a timeline. Here the timeline runs from time 0, which is today, out to about 10 or 12 years, and I'm really interested in the first 10 years on this diagram. The cash flow diagram is really nothing more than a timeline with the respective cash flows shown, where the cash flows that are going out of my pocket, that is payments, are down arrows, and the cash flows that are coming into my pocket, or cash receipts, are up arrows. In this case, we can see that there is a receipt happening at the end of the first year of $100. There's another receipt of the same amount happening at the end of year 2, and so on, years 3, 4, and so on up to year 10. In year 10, it's considered that there is a notional sale, that the property in this case might be sold, and the value here we have is $1,000. Obviously that's a very inexpensive property. It might be $1,000 or something, but for our purposes it gives us an idea of what's going on. By the time we take all of these cash flows, the rental cash flows happening year by year, plus the notional sale at the end of the period, that really gives us the total value of the property to us. And what we have to do is work out its present value. If you're drawing cash flow diagrams to help you understand some particular problem, all you really need to do is draw the timeline and the indicative up and down arrows with some indication of about what they are, or at least where the important ones are. You'll find that by doing this it makes it a lot easier to conceptualize often very complex cash flow situations. While I'm only showing one row of receipts in here, you may want to split that up, say as rent on the land or ground rent split out from the total property rent or something. So there's a lot of flexibility with how you use this thing. It does help us though to conceptualize what happens through the discounted cash flow process. In this example, we can see that we're using a discount rate of 20%. And what that means is that the $100 that I'm going to receive in 12 months' time is discounted by 20% over 1 year, which means that the $100 is discounted by a factor of 0.8333, and calculating this we have come across before, and that leaves the $100 really only being worth $83 today. Similarly with the receipt in year 2, the $100 is really only worth $69.44. These calculations down here, by the way, are not strictly speaking part of the cash flow diagram. They're the computations that I'll eventually make. I'm putting them in here for purposes of illustration. But when you draw a cash flow diagram, what I'm wanting you to think about is the logic of how the cash flows into the future either roll up back to the present as a single present value amount, or perhaps in some cases how they may be using the discount factor moved into the future, so that they all end up with what their notional future value is by the time they've been compounded at the discount rate. We can see here that at 20%, $100 per year of rent plus a notional sale of $1,000 is only worth $580 today. We can see what happens as the discount rate changes. I'm going to take this discount rate and take it down to 15%. What you'll notice there is that the $500 and something has now increased up to $749. That's nice. If I take the discount rate down to 10%, the PV, the value of the property, is again increased, this time to $1,000. If I take it all the way down to 0, then the PV, the present value of the future benefits of owning the property, which is the rents plus the notional sale, is now up to $2,000, which is about as high as it can get, and those with a bit of quick mental arithmetic will notice that $2,000 is nothing more than the sum of 10 times 100 plus 1,000. So that's your cash flow diagram. Rather than doing these things year by year, as we saw last week, we can use the Excel functions, and down here in this panel is an example of the different Excel functions that are particularly relevant to this system or this situation of calculations. We introduced the Excel PV function last week. And here it is illustrated across here to give the 2000, and you'll notice that the discount rate is 0%. Let's bring the discount rate up to 15% to make it a bit interesting. And here we find it calculating the present value, or the value of the property, as $749, which you can see worked out here longhand. Okay, that's probably as much as we need to do by way of introducing the cash flow diagrams, except that I once more recommend to you to consider doing these when you have real problems to work out, especially things in partial value or refurbishment problems, or things like working out ground rents. Drawing up at least the blue part, this blue line with the up arrows and the down arrows, can be very, very handy way of getting the concept of what's going on actually sort of down on paper. Let's move now to the actual calculation exercises.